like to tell you at this time some of the things that they're going to be eating and what these things represent. First of all, I want to tell you that during the meal, they had 4 cups of wine. These were dispersed at different times during the meal, and they had a special meaning for them. The first cup was a cup of sanctification, and it was God's promise, I will bring you out. The next cup, the cup of deliverance, when God says, I will deliver you. The third cup is the cup of redemption, when God promised the Israelites, I will redeem you. And the fourth cup is the cup of praise, when God said to them, I will be your God. And so, as we begin the meal, the first thing that they have is a sprig of parsley. And you may wonder why a sprig of parsley? Because the parsley represents how when the first Israelites first went into Egypt, they were given the best land, and so they prospered. They thought all was well. They had animals, and they had good crops, and everything was going so well, much like parsley. But then Pharaoh died, the Pharaoh that had known Joseph and known what Joseph did for the country. He passed away, and the Pharaoh that was governing at this time forgot about Joseph. He didn't know all that had been done. And so he made the Israelite people slaves. And so the parsley is dipped into salty water. The salty water represents the tears of the people when they had to labor so hard, and they cried great tears. The next thing that we have on our table is the matzah bread. And so in a Jewish home, if you were partaking of this Passover feast, the head of the home would break that piece of matzah bread into 2 pieces. He would wrap the larger piece in a napkin, and then it would be hidden somewhere in the house. Later, after dinner, the children would all go and they would search throughout the house looking for that hidden piece of matzah. And the one who found it would receive a prize. And so this is very special to them. The matzah bread, if you will notice, it's a flat bread. It's made without any leavening. Why was this important? Because at the time that the Israelites left Egypt, after God had made himself known and had said that he was going to release his people, then they had to be prepared to leave very, very quickly. And their leavening did not have time to rise. And so what they took with them was a bread dough without any leavening in it. Leavening represents sin also. And so God said there was to be no leaven. The next thing that we have are 4 special foods. The first one is maror, which is a bitter herb. And along with the maror was cheresat, which is a mixture of apples and honey and nuts and wine. And so, as we look at these, the maror was a bitter herb. We have romaine lettuce, which is the symbol for this. and it is dipped into horseradish. Why? Because the romaine lettuce at first is sweet, but the longer that romaine lettuce remains, the more bitter it becomes. And that is much like the Jewish life was in Egypt. It was sweet at first, but it became more bitter. The harasat reminds the Israelite people of cement, and they saw much of that as they used the bricks which they had been forced to make, and they cemented them to build buildings for Pharaoh. So then we're going to see an egg. The egg doesn't really resemble their life in Egypt, but what does the egg represent? We see the oval, which is a life that continues. And not only that, when we think of an egg, we think of a new life. And so that's what they had thought of with the egg. The last thing that they have in a normal Jewish meal would have been the lamb. The lamb that they had taken into their home on the 10th of Nisan, had kept in their home, and then on the twilight of the 14th, it would be roasted. But you see, we don't have lamb this time. We have a bone. Why do we not have a lamb? Because the Israelites no longer have their temple. And the Israelite sacrifices had to be made in the temple. And so the bone that they have on their table represents the temple that they no longer have. And the sacrifices they can no longer have. And so the Israelites remember that they had to leave the old life of idolatry and slavery and to begin a new life in the land that God had promised their forefathers.